Well, that looks really good. Yeah. You're gonna eat that?
All right. The eldest son of Harold Manville and Helen Mgrublian of Eintop. Manville, his father, the Eintopsies, there we go. Manville had immigrated to the U.S. through Ellis Island in 1909 and served in the U.S. Armed Forces in World War I. He was in the same battalion as Irving Berlin. And Helen was an orphan of the Armenian genocide and came in 1921. Harold's siblings, Irene Vilazicina and Manville Mgrublian Jr., Manny, were later born in the Chicago area. Harold's early education took place in Euclid, Ohio, and immediately after his high school graduation in 1942, he was inducted into the Army Air Force at the onset of World War II. Due to his strong aptitude in Morse code, which we'll hear more about tonight, he was selected to enter a secret intelligence school to learn how to intercept, copy, and jam the Japanese Katakana code. Assigned to a field unit of General MacArthur's headquarters, Harold spent the duration of the war serving on 7 different islands in the North and South Pacific. After the war, Harold attended Fenn College in Cleveland, majoring in metallurgical engineering. In 1947, he and his family moved to South Pasadena, former mayor here, and he was employed by Peerless Pumps, a division of FMC, serving many different leadership capacities for 41 years. Harold is a member of the American Legion and the Masonic Lodge for over 65 years. He is a member of the Knights of Barton for over 55 years and served as commander of its Government Lodge here in Pasadena. He has also served on the South Pasadena's Natural Resources Commission and as a reserve engineer for the city's fire department. Hopefully no longer, right, Dennis? It's positive. Harold was a trustee of the Ararat home for 23 years and served as vice chairman for 10 years. Harold still resides in South Pasadena with his wife of 58 years, Alice, has 2 children, myself and my sister Diane, 3 grandchildren, Tallene, and then Catherine and Madeline, who are here. Raise your hands. Here, so 3 grandchildren. So. One thing, if you've heard about the time my dad was raised, he was born in 24, and he was raised in the Depression. And essentially, he spent his college years in the South Pacific. And one of the things that, if you know GIs from World War II, one of the things that you know about them is they don't think they did anything special. It was just their duty. And one of the things that drove him nuts, Bears, and you got me in big trouble, is when you use the word hero. Because my father would tell you the heroes are still probably in the fields of Normandy and in the seas of the South Pacific. But that said, I think my father, we started talking about his service in the war about 10 years ago. I really didn't know much about it until that time. And I encouraged him to talk about it. So tonight he's going to talk for about 30 minutes. This is really going to be about his voyage, his travel from when he graduated from high school through his time coming back to Ohio at the end of the war. He'll talk for about 30 minutes, and then, Dad, you'd be willing to take some questions? That sound good? Okay, so he'll take some questions. So I'm going to turn it over to my father, Harold Mgrublian.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm glad David mentioned the fact that I have never considered myself a hero. I've known heroes. They're buried overseas. Some of them are wounded and still there. Many of them passed on. David mentioned the fact that I came from a military family. My dad being, as you mentioned, at Camp Upton, Long Island, serving in the U.S. Army, along in the same company as Irving Berlin. I do all the songs. My brother served in the Korean War. My brother-in-law served in World War II. Now, during the in World War II, the number of U.S. men and women that participated in that campaign amounted to 16 million. Of the 16 million, I understood the other day, there are about 3.5% left. When I say 3.5%, out of the 16 million people served, only about 560,000 men remain that served in World War II. And we're all going pretty fast. Now, this is my first talk. I've been asked many times to give such a talk. I have never given one until tonight. And I don't know why I did it tonight, but there's a reason. But let me give you the reason why I thought I would speak tonight. When I was a youngster attending the second and third grades, at the age of about 7 or 8, I attended elementary school in northeastern Ohio near Lake Erie there, in a village. And every year, just before Memorial Day, at that time it was known as Decoration Day. So they changed the Memorial Day later on. But every Decoration Day or Memorial Day, on the Friday before Memorial Day, they would bring in Civil War veterans. The first year in 1932, I noticed there were 6 or 7 of them that stood up there with their dark blue uniforms. And as time went on to the next 2 years, it got down to where there's only 1, and there were no more. So I was tremendously impressed at that point, seeing the Civil War veterans, you know, when I was a youngster, and it interested me in the Civil War and everything that happened during that period. I got inducted when I was 18 years old. I got discharged when I was 21. I weighed 138 pounds, 5 foot 10.5. I was pretty thick. So anyway, what happened is that after saying goodbye to the family, I went to the Cleveland Induction Center. It looks like my whole class was there. All the fellas in the class seemed to show up at the same time. We're all 18 years old. While we were at the induction center, they had various members of the service there, Marines, Navy, Army, Air Force, and Army. They were sizing us up while we were getting inducted there so that we could join their service. Well, this Marine went right by me so fast I hardly noticed this guy because I was a skinny guy, little guy. He didn't want me. So I said, good, I'm not going to join the Marines. The next thing I knew is that the Air Force guy got a hold of me, and they were inducting into the Air Force at the time, Army Air Force. And he looked at me and he said, you. He said, would you like to be a tail gunner on a bomber? I said, yeah, I'd like that. And I said, I'd like that. He says, we'll get you into the Air Force. I said, good. So I had that in my mind. The next thing I knew was after we got inducted, they put us on a little bus. They took us to Camp Perry, Ohio, 40 miles west of Cleveland on Lake Erie. And at that place, I had a number of tests given to me and also shots. When they gave me the shots, they shot me on my right arm, they shot me on my left arm. Man, they were pumping away quickly, you know, getting me ready. Anyway, during the tests that I've taken there, they found out that I had an aptitude for code work. I said, well, that's surprising because I never knew I had aptitude for code, but they found out somehow through the tests that I'd taken there. So they sent me to Greensboro, North Carolina on an old troop train. I think the thing was built in the early 1900s. And I wound up in an Air Force camp, a brand new one down in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I was assigned to Squadron D. We were the first 50 people there. There's where I had my basic training. It was really rigorous. And of course, number one picture up there is a picture taken while I was over there. I don't know if it's up there now. Yes. So anyway, after we did our basic training and got more shots in Greensboro, I was sent to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, up north. It was the head school, Eastern Signal Corps School for the United States military. There I had to learn the International Morse Code, and of course I was looking for 7 words a minute, which is required for being a tail gunner. Well, I said I'm going to have to try to pass that because that's what I wanted to be. So I passed 7 words a minute. And the instructor, I was already saying, well, I'm ready to go, you know. He said, no, keep going. See if you can pass higher speeds. So I worked another few weeks and I passed 15 words a minute. And they said, you're now a low-speed operator. I said, okay. Then I kept going. He says, keep going. So I said, okay. So I went up to 25 words a minute. Sending and receiving. You had to do both. Send it and receive it to pass the test. Well, on the higher code speeds, 20, 25 words a minute, rather than use the dot deal that you go up and down vertically like this, we had a so-called semi-automatic key that would provide the dashes and provide the dots just by controlling it. So we had to pass those tests by using the semi-automatic key, which we often refer to as the bug. Now, to pass the high-speed tests at 20 and 25 words a minute, it was not given to us very clearly. What they would do is they would increase the volume on the code, decrease the volume on the code, the bombs would be going off, all this stuff is going on, and also in the background I heard Edith Piaf singing La Vie en Rose in French. And they were doing anything they could to get your mind off the code, you know, not copy it, you know, and fail it. So they were doing these things purposely so that you were able to copy the code under battle conditions. Well, I was glad I passed it, you know, and I said, well, after passing 25 words a minute, they said, you don't have to do too much, just check some of the tests that are being given to you in here, just relax for a few days. I said, okay, that's what I did. Unbeknownst to me, they were checking me out in Ohio at my high school, and where I worked very briefly before I got inducted, trying to get a clearance on me, to check my qualifications and all that, and get a clearance. You know, I'm an 18-year-old there. You know, I've done very much, you know. But anyway, they did. They checked it out, and then they called me and they said, guess what? We're going to put you into a school, and this was the radio intelligence school at Fort Monmouth to study the Japanese code. Well, the minute I heard the Japanese code, I said, I know where I'm going. I'm not going to Europe, because at that point I didn't know which direction I was going. Europe or to the Pacific. But learning the Jap code, I know where I was going. Now, I went to the building on Fort Monmouth there. The place was all fenced in, heavy security, lots of lights in the building, lots of people in the building, downstairs and upstairs. And after I got inside, they showed my papers and all, I went upstairs and I noticed there were Army personnel, Navy personnel, Marine personnel, a whole bunch of warrant officers, all taking the Japanese Katakana code that I was about to take, you know. So the place was really humming, you know, with people learning the code. Now to learn the code, to learn this code, not only did you have to learn it, but you have to copy the code in longhand. You have to also learn how to use it on a typewriter. I've never used a typewriter in my life, but I learned how to touch that as a result of it. So I had to pass it on a typewriter, and even I had to pass it writing in Japanese. We say, how did we learn? Well, we had to learn a little bit about it. It was not a very long course, all that scratchy stuff, you know. But we only had to pass that test by about 5 words a minute, so it was very easy to do for me. So after learning all that, I copied the code in all these various ways like that. And we show slide number 2 over here. Do you see that up there? You notice, it's called the codes. What I've tried to do there is show you on the left-hand side the International Morse Code. The International Morse Code on the left, and on the right-hand side, the Katakana code, and the differences between the 2 codes. If you notice that on the International Morse, the alphabet consists of Four dots and dashes, and in the Katakana code, the alphabets consist of up to 5 dots and dashes. The numbers were identical, 5 dots and dashes in each case. An example of the code, about 7 words a minute, would be something that's typical that you may recognize, SOS, the call for a ship in distress on the high seas. Went like this. It's about 7 words a minute. Now, if you go up to higher speeds, I use the term best bet wire because there's a rhythm to that thing, and it goes like this at higher speeds. That's best bet wire. You see it up there. Now, the Japanese names and languages mainly consisted of words with a consonant and a vowel. Easy to pronounce, but hard to read and write. Nagasaki, for instance, was broken down to Na-ga-sa-ki. Yamamoto, Ya-ma-mo-to. Hirohito, Hi-ro-hi-to. And Hiroshima, Hiroshima. Notice the word chi in there, 2 consonants. Well, they do have something like that, which are TSU, tsu, or CHI, chi, and others, you know. But we copied those anyway with a little marker on it. Now, the consonant and vowel combination represented a group of up to 5 dots and dashes. And nearly all code in World War II is encoded by cryptography and decoded when received. Just about all of it. The code was broken. Now, I was on the offensive. The men before me were on the defensive. The code was broken when they got down to about Guadalcanal. And since we broke the code, I didn't, but they did. Since the code was broken, we could understand what they were communicating, which helped an awful lot in saving a lot of lives. So anyway, what happened there that since the code was broken, which allowed us to know their movements to help with winning the war. This happened about the time of the Guadalcanal invasion. After I finished taking the course, the Intercept Operator course, it's known as the IOJ course, Intercept Operator Japanese. There's another one, Intercept Operator German, for those that went to Europe. They broke the code there too. Well, anyway, I received a certificate that you see up there, you know, and if you look on the right-hand side, it says over there that passed all those things up to high speed. Then we had to do signal lamps, just like the Navy does, you know. They flip these lights on the boats. That's what we had to learn 2 at 5 words a minute. Then we did installation and adjustments of field, radio nets.
Microphone. Dad, you gotta use the mic.
Loads of it. Installation, operation, adjustments of field radio nets. Then we did radio procedure. And of course, the last item on there, the secret course, was the course that I just completed. Now, basically, if you read what the government says about the work we did, it's at the bottom there. You can read that down. Could you all see that up there? Yeah. If you cannot read it, it says identify and intercept Japanese military radio signals by means of a radio receiver. Yeah. Copied intercepted messages and relayed them for translation and decoding. Assembled, installed, operated, and maintained radio receiving and direction finding equipment, which I'll explain later. Performed web repairmen, truck drivers, equipment installers, 3 officers, and electronic equipment, which included receivers, transmitters, handy-talkie, walkie-talkies, cryptographic devices that we had to learn to use, and also generators. As a unit, we had to go to maneuvers, and we spent that time at the Cleveland National Forest, which was at Egg Harbor, New Jersey. The next thing we did was we got on a troop train on the East Coast of New Jersey, went clear across the country to the West Coast on this troop train, and went all the way through Denver, then up to Ogden, Utah, and from Ogden, Utah into Pittsburgh, California. I'd never known there was a Pittsburgh out here, but apparently there was. So we went to Pittsburgh, California. It's a port of embarkation before you go overseas. They fattened us up by giving us all kinds of good food, milkshakes and so forth. That was all ready for our journey on the high seas. We finally took a ferry and went to San Francisco Harbor. We went to the harbor, got loaded on the USAT Jane Addams, United States Army Transport Jane Addams. Had 1,000 troops on that ship. The thing we took off, went under the Golden Gate, I remember seeing that. Went out about half an hour, about a little ways out past the Golden Gate, the waters got quite rough and choppy. And we hit the islands out there called the Farallon Islands. Apparently the last outpost that we saw before reaching our destination. Well, when we got to that Farallon Islands, my stomach got upset. So did other people. Their stomach got upset. We were all leaning over the side of the ship feeding the fish. You're trying to get acclimated to being in the Navy. But anyway, that was the only time in the Pacific that I ever got seasick, was right in the Farallon Islands. So what happened is we traveled on this troop ship solo. There was nothing else with us. We traveled zigzag. By the way, 25 days it took to get our destination. The reason was we went zig this way, zag that way, zig this way, zag that way. Why? Because we wouldn't be detected by Japanese submarines. Apparently if you did that, they'd lose contact with you. So we got to halfway, we got to the equator. And as we're crossing the equator, many of us have never crossed the equator. We didn't know that there was going to be an initiation. As you cross the equator, people are initiated. So anyway, they turned the fire hose on us, threw oil on us, threw grease on us. We had to wear everything backwards for the whole day. We all became shellbacks after that, and the fun stopped after that. So we went past the equator. Most of the time, we slept on the deck because it's it was sort of confining down below on sleeping on these bunks that were 4 or 5 high, you know. So we slept on the deck, but sleeping on the deck, no lights, no cigarettes, no matches, no nothing. Pure darkness. They were very strict about being dark on deck. Anyway, we kept going and kept going zigzagging until we got to New Caledonia, New Caledonia, which is a French island. The only thing we saw on this trip going all the way down there beside the Farallon Islands to begin with was that about 2 days before that, there was a plane that came toward us. We looked at it, was the Australian Royal Air Force plane that came, circled our ship and went back. That's the only thing we saw before we hit Noumea, New Caledonia. Noumea, New Caledonia was the staging ground for not only us, but other troops that were there. We practiced with our installation equipment while we were there. On that island, of course, were the French, and also the natives who were called Kanaks. These Kanaks were natives that put lime in their hair and turned their hair orange color. Walking around with orange color hair. Beside the Kanaks were Polynesians and Melanesians, and of course the French. The strange thing about that island, in the camp we were in, there was a pet deer. This pet deer, I got pictures of it, but I didn't bring it with me. This pet deer, go up to it, you can pet him and all that, you know, we call him Mammy. But the thing about this deer is at night he'd come into our tent and steal our candy bars. He liked candy bars. I said, I've never heard of a deer eating candy bars, but this one, particular one did. So anyway, we got rid of Bambi after we let her in Katakana. We got our orders for 9 of us intercept operator men to fly to Brisbane, Australia. And we flew on a B-24 converted bomber. 9 of us got in there. We went all the way to Brisbane, about 800 miles, to attend a 4-week course at the Australian Royal Air Force Radio Intelligence School to learn to copy the Japanese code, not the way we learned it, but by shorthand that the Australian Air Force has used. By the way, that's the method we use throughout the whole Pacific, forgetting all the rest we learned at Fort Monmouth. Now, while we were there, we finished the course, and after 4 weeks, we got a certificate. Yeah. Well, before I go any further, we got that certificate. I'll show the certificates. Back up on that other one. Yeah. Just to give you an idea, if you look at the map up here, the route that we took in the Pacific was this. We went from Cleveland to Toledo, Ohio, Camp Perry, down to Greensboro, North Carolina, up to Fort Monmouth, from North Monmouth across the country to San Francisco, from San Francisco all the way down to New Caledonia, from New Caledonia to Brisbane, Australia, from Brisbane, Australia, I went up to Leyte, from Leyte, I went on up to Leyte, and from there I went on up to Lingayen Gulf, from Lingayen Gulf to Mindoro, back to Manila, and back down from Manila. We went from there, and at the end of the war, we went up to Seoul, Korea, Jinsan Harbor, which was near Seoul, Korea, and we went back to the States. The northern route came to Seattle. From Seattle, we went all the way across the Great Northern Railroad, all the way back to Camp Atterbury, Indiana, and then home. This map that you're seeing here happens to be taken in WWII, New Caledonia. We put up our tents there, and I got 2 of my buddies over there. Fell on the left is Paul McConnell, and Paul McConnell came from Dinuba, California. And on the right is Bill Krokenberger. He's from Philadelphia. But both of them were intercept operators just like I was, taken in New Caledonia. Then the next thing that happened after we completed the course, we got our identification tags. Can you shoot that?
Yeah, it's up.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I was in Australia. That's the Central Bureau 500. They took this picture because while we were taking the course in Australia with the Australian Royal Air Force, we had to have this pass. Then we got our orders to leave Brisbane, Australia, 9 of us IOG men, to go to Hollandia, Dutch New Guinea. We left on a C-54, I thought it was C-54. We left at midnight. 8 hours later, we wound up at Hollandia, New Guinea, which is on the western half of New Guinea, and the eastern half is controlled by Australia, the western half by the Dutch. And we had to convert some of our money to Dutch money. But the only trouble was we had no place to spend it. So a jungle, you know, nothing to spend it with. But I brought some souvenirs home, that's about all. So anyway, that island happened to be right, Hollandia happened to be right on the equator. Tom, if you look directly over your head, the sun was directly above you. Humid, jungle all around you. And it's a terrible island to live on, I'll tell you that. But, you know, New Guinea is also known as headhunter territory. That's where if you go into the middle of it, with the Stanley Owens Ranges, that's where these headhunter tribes are. And you don't want to horse around too much in the middle. Around the coast. I think one of the Rockefellers had his head taken off. When he went there, they never did find it. So anyway, as far as New Guinea is concerned, I remember that we had a number of, when you traveled in the jungle to set up anything, leeches would get into your foot. I didn't realize that until I got itching on my ankle there, and I stuck my hand down in there and came up, it was all bloody. I found out there were leeches. And the only way to get them out with you was to get a cigarette and poke at it like that, and they'd squirm out, you know. So anyway, we learned how to get away from stepping too much in the jungle areas where these leeches were prevalent. One thing we did while we were in the land in New Guinea is we found a cave. The cave apparently was used by the Japanese when their soldiers were down there. It was a pretty good-sized cave. And when we got in there, we checked it out, and we had a lot of big packages of cigarettes, big bundles of them like that, about 50 cigarettes in each package. We loaded up the truck, you know, with a lot of cigarettes, and a lot of us sent them home to our parents, our dads and this and that, those didn't smoke, because they had a shortage of cigarettes in the United States. At the time, they were very glad to get these cigarettes, those that we got through the cave. Another thing we noticed in the cave was that there was a lot of women's apparels in that cave. There were bras and things like that. So I think what was happening there was that the Japanese soldiers and officers that stayed in that cave used to bring in Korean women, used to bring in Chinese women, and they used them for a specific purpose, and you all know for what. They were called comfort women, if you ever heard of the term comfort. That's what they used them for, and that's what that cave showed us, that they did use that kind of thing. But we were happy not only to see that, but also to get the cigarettes out there and ship them back home. Our intercept work started in Dutch New Guinea. So we started copying some stations or identifying and all that, so forth, but we didn't do much else after that. We had to shower in a mountain stream while we were in Hollandia, New Guinea, because there's no place to shower, so forth. But guess what happened to me, and others too, but I wound up with so-called jungle rot. Any skin disease over there was called jungle rot. So anyway, I wound up that. It was so bad that I had to go to the hospital for 3 weeks. Meanwhile, when I was going in the hospital, my outfit, the 42 men, left on the Leyte convoy. That's where the initial invasion of Leyte was made. They left without me. So anyway, after I was in the hospital 3 weeks, I finally got out. And after I was released from the hospital, I was put on the next convoy that left from Hollandia, that was going to Luzon, northern Philippines, because they were going to invade from there to go south to Manila and capture Manila. My ship was known as the Edwin T. Meredith. Instead of the Luzon, they were supposed to go to Luzon, Langan Gulf. My ship went to Tacloban, Leyte. Instead of going to my outfit, I wound up in Tacloban, Leyte. But if you remember Tacloban, Leyte, a few years ago, they had a big tsunami over there, and it was on TV. But anyway, when I went to Tacloban, Leyte, they said everybody, including officers, men, had to unload the ship. That's all you do, nothing else. Unload the ship as fast as you can. So that's when the place was bedlam, you know. So we unloaded the ship. After 2 days, 2 nights, I couldn't sleep. We had to keep doing it back and forth, back and forth. The mud was about that deep out there, up to my ankles, you know, plenty of mud on Leyte. But we unloaded the ship, and after 2 days, I said to myself, boy, I better find out what I'm supposed to do. I got to contact my outfit. So I'm looking at the red card here. Yeah, what I did is, since I was stranded in Katakana, I had to contact the chief signal officer. I finally got a hold of him in Katakana. I'd never known the man, but I got a hold of him because he was the chief officer. And I said to him, I says, I don't know where my outfit is. There's someplace in the Philippines here. And I got to unite with them. So he said, let me look at your order. He looks at me, he says, oh yeah. He says, I know where they are. They're on Mindoro Island. An island way on the western side of the Philippines. And he says, I will contact them, he said. And he says, in the meantime, I want you to work. He said, I want you to work with a high-speed radio station 5 miles from here as a high-speed operator until we get your orders for you to go to your outfit. I said, okay. So I went over to Tolosa Leyte, and I stayed there and operated as net control station. Operate the high-speed station not only between our group there, but with my outfit up in Mindoro Island and another station on another island. We had a net control station of 3 stations communicating with each other. I finally got my, if you look at the map on the Philippines that's shown on here, it shows you the southern section, Mindanao. Above that is Leyte. Above that is Leyte. Then, of course, the northern part is Luzon, the dark part. Okay, show the next slide, fragment number 8. Yeah, you all seen these pictures on the flyers that you got, you know. That was in Tolosa Leyte, right next to our radio station that we were an operator, and I was acting as a high-speed operator at that time, you know, just for 1 month until I got my orders to go. On the right-hand side are the Anzacs. I'll tell you about the Anzacs later on. They're from New Zealand. They're the radar men. They were attached to our unit also. We were known as the Radio and Radar Countermeasures Unit. One month later, I got my orders, number 9, to leave Leyte for Mindoro Island. And these were the orders. I don't know if you could read down in there, but they made a special order for me. Basically, it says, travel by air is necessary to accomplish, travel by air is necessary to accomplish an emergency war mission. And it's by command of by General MacArthur and by the Adjutant General, the Adjutant Major there. Well, I got orders to leave for Leyte to go to Mindoro. We had to go in 3 C-47 planes. We had to fly low between the mountains, not up high where we could be detected. The 3 planes went together. I had a door that was open, I could look out. There's nobody else on the plane but me and a barrel of Coke, syrup there, and my 2 radio sets that I had to take with me. I had to take 2 radio sets that amounted to about 500 pounds to our outfit up in Mindoro. So I had to safeguard that and take it with me. So these 3 planes took off, and then en route, they said, no, we can't go to Mindoro. Instead, he said we have to go to Lingayen Gulf, which is way up in northern Luzon. So we went up to Lingayen Gulf. Well, we got up to Lingayen Gulf. The pilot of the plane that had my radio sets on said, I'm not going to be able to make it to Mindoro. He said, why don't you go up and down the strip? He said, talk to some of the pilots to see if they'll go to Mindoro. I said, okay, so I did. I went up and down the strip. I finally found a pilot there that said he was going to leave that afternoon to go to San Jose, Mindoro. I said, listen, I got 2 radio sets, can you have them moved? He said, yeah, so I got a lift truck driver. They took the sets over there and put on his plane. But while they were doing that, I noticed another plane that came down, And I noticed them taking on fellas on a stretcher and putting them under the wing of the plane because the weather was hot, and they were putting them under the wing of the plane, which was shady. They were putting these fellas one after the other there, and I went up there and I says, I want to talk to them, see who these people are. Went up there and I found that they were prisoners that were in the Santa Tomas prison in Manila during the war. They were captured, they were put in there. They were very frail, skin and bones, because they weren't fed very well at all. And I talked to them a little bit, and they were going back to the States, but they came to Lingay, Gulf, en route before they went to the States. So I was surprised to see that these fellows that were in prison at Santa Tomas in Manila, you know, were on their way back home, because our forces had already captured Manila and captured the prison. That's why they were there at that moment. Well, anyway, the Air Force fellows Anyway, I got on the plane. I was going to Mindoro Island. And on the way there, as I said, we traveled among the mountains, you know. After we got to Mindoro, the Air Force pilot says, why don't you stay with us overnight, because your outfit's located 40 miles away. We're going to have to contact them and they can come and pick you up and take you in the morning. They did. I hadn't eaten anything since 5 o'clock that morning when we left Leyte. And I was sure glad to get a good meal. Boy, they really have a good meal, the Air Force guys. They served me with salad, and steak, and this and that. They fixed me up that night. I slept there, got up in the morning. Lieutenant Tremaine came from my outfit, picked me up, took the 2 radio sets, and we went back to my outfit. Everybody there was glad to see me, you know, and I was glad to be back with them, you know. So anyway, Faster. Yeah. We also operated some direction-finding towers. By the way, this is our radio shack that you see here. You had a door on it, you opened up, you had a generator that supplied all the electricity we did to operate the receivers and transmitters. Now, on the right-hand side, can you put that slide on?
It's up there.
Yeah. The strongest Japanese code station that I copied and we copied was known as Salteco 4. Salteco 4 had the call letters as I showed it with the dots and dashes. And I never forgot these call letters, even though I forgot other call letters on Japanese stations I've copied, whether they were Army, Navy, or Marine. Salteco 4 was always sent da 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 da. That's the call letters that you see there on the dots and dashes that I list there. All transmitted messages were encoded. The station operated from Rabaul, New Britain, to Sendai, Japan. Japanese air raid messages were often sent in clear text, and I could understand that. We intercepted and recorded these messages. We were situated on Mindoro Island next to us was an airstrip. And on that airstrip were B-24 bombers. There were P-38 Lightning fighters. There were also some A-20 bombers. Every morning, just like clockwork, 5 o'clock, the B-24 bombers would take off. About 20 of them. They would go to the islands up north, the China coast, or to southern Japan. After they would leave at 5 a.m., 2 hours later, at 7 o'clock, the fighters would take off, the Lockheed P-38s would take off. The reason they took off later is they were faster, and they would catch up with the bombers before they got to the destination. Anyway, while all this is going on, I was getting recorded messages from the Japanese. They detected them and told us how many bombers there were. If I counted 20 that morning, which I often did at 5 a.m., they'd say 20 bombers were there, B-24s, you know. They'd report it to each other. that they were en route going up north. So anyway, it went all well. And then in the afternoon, the first thing that would happen is about late afternoon, about 4 o'clock or so, the bombers would return. If 20 went, we were hoping 20 would return. Some of them would return with the engines knocked out, 1 or 2 engines out. Then, before the bombers would return, 2 hours before that, the fighters returned, because they were much faster. So the first thing that came back were the fighters, and the bombers followed afterwards. They all come back. Every morning like clockwork, they would go, bomb, and come back. It happened for well over 2 months that I was up there. If you look at this map up here, you see some of the planes that didn't come back, that came back, but they were damaged so badly that they were scrapped. And you see them on the airstrip right there, the B-24s that we have sitting there. Some of the fellows that are out there shown on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side there, they were all intercept operators just like me. Then on the right-hand side, you notice the direction finding equipment. It was an installation about 20 feet high, had 2 big antennas about 8 feet on each side like that, and by the use of an oscilloscope in the middle, we used to move that thing around like this and find out in which direction the Japanese station was transmitting from, and record that and report it. There'd be 2 other stations, 1 other station or 2 other stations, we didn't know where they were. They were doing the same thing. They'd get readings, and by triangulation, you could find out the general location of the Japanese station that was transmitting. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, I sent this picture of this home, by the way, the one that you see up there now. See the direction finding tower on there? Well, they actually cut that out, so when the folks got it, they didn't get it on. They just got a picture of us, not the direction finder. That's how strict they were as far as what you could send home and not send home. On the right-hand side is the plane that we used to travel from island to island in the Philippines. General MacArthur's C-47 plane. We used to use that, to go from island to island to our interception work. I'm going to try to whip it up here a bit. In June of 1945, Ziojiman took the C-47 and we went to Manila. We were situated 45 miles south of Manila on a place called Tagaytay Ridge, at a 2,000-foot elevation. It's a very beautiful place. It's regarded as one of the 2 resorts in the Philippines. As you sit up there, you look down. I'd never seen a place like that. You look down and you saw a lake called Taal Lake, T-A-A-L. In the middle of this small lake was a volcano. And in the middle of the volcano, in the crater, there was water in there. It was lukewarm water, and the Filipino people used to wash their clothes and bathe in this mud in that water. It was lukewarm water. So it was quite a sight to look down and see not only a lake down below, but a volcano and a crater on top of that, and the water in that crater. Very strange place. But anyway, we were on Tagaytay Ridge there. I did guard duty along that ridge because Japanese were still down in there. We had a 50 caliber machine gun. I knew how to operate the 50 caliber machine gun. I had my rifle with me. At night we used to guard all that. We had guard all around the camp. On August 1st, we moved to the WWII Country Club in Manila to intercept the Hiroshima-Kyoto circuit. I was trying to get a hold of the Hiroshima-Kyoto circuit, which I've been copying for a while. And it was fairly regularly that I did that. But all of a sudden, the messages stopped. And all I was getting was the station from Hiroshima to Kyoto. Kyoto, by the way, is Seoul, Korea, and the Japanese renamed these cities. So Seoul was called Kyoto. That was copying the Seoul Hiroshima circuit. And Seoul was trying to get a hold of Hiroshima, and I put in my log that they couldn't get him, the station closed down. I went to another frequency, I checked other frequencies, they weren't there. Found out later what happened. Hiroshima was bombed, the atomic bomb. And they put that station out of business. Anyway, that all happened August 8th over there, not over here, but over there, because the international date line. And I marked all these things down in my little diary. 2 days later, there's no surrender. You look at Hiroshima, 140,000 people dead, just like that. 60% of the city leveled, just like that. They didn't give up. 2 days later, August 10th, another bomb, Nagasaki. Same thing happened in Nagasaki. No surrender. They finally surrendered. It was an unconditional surrender. And they surrendered. They found out that they had enough. So anyway, when they felt that they had enough, the war ended. So what I have here is that August 10th, Nagasaki was hit. August 15th, the war was over. On August 26th, we took the Purple Cloud, the GH Crew plane, we turned them into Duro Island, to the place that we started from after the war was over. We got into a 17-ship convoy. I'm almost at the end. We got a 17-ship convoy, and we headed north, and we got up beyond Luzon to go up north. We were going to Seoul, Korea, by the way. Go up north. We hit a typhoon. It ripped the seam of our LSM that I was on. When I say LSM, it was a landing ship medium. You got LSTs, landing ship tank, the big ones. Landing ship were smaller ships, like the LSTs. So anyway, we had to come back to Manila, change LSMs, get on another one, go into the convoy, and with minesweepers, we went up north. I asked this salty Navy guy on this LSM we were on going up north. I said, hey, you guys, I said, I noticed you got 2 Japanese flags on your conning tower. I said, you got 2 Jap flags? You got 2 planes? He said, yeah. He said, we got 2 planes. But he said, damn, he says, we not only got 2 planes, we got one of our own planes where we picked up the pilot. In other words, they knocked down one of our own planes on the firepower, but they picked up the pilot after he landed into the ocean, you know. So anyway, I said, wow. I said, it's amazing that they were able to do that, you know, and still do a good job. So anyway, let me keep going here. Yeah, we left Lagan Cup with the minesweepers. We used minesweepers because the typhoon broke away all these mines. So we had to sweep them so that we don't hit any of them. On November 15th, we arrived in Jinsan, Korea. That's on the port, on the inside port of Korea, South Korea now. We convoyed to Seoul, Korea, about 25, 30 miles internally, and we were processed to return to the United States. On November 28th, we left Seoul, and my unit, I had to leave my unit, we go back to Jinsan Harbor, and we got on the troop ship called Golden City. Had 1,500 troops on it, and went all the way, took the northern route, came down into Seattle, Washington. We reached Seattle, Washington on December 19th, and we were taken to a fort up there called Fort Lawton. The thing about Fort Lawton while we were there, I noticed that the people that were serving us over there, and I had my first salad over there. We never had salad overseas. And our first salad, the people serving us were German prisoners that they used there to serve us. So we were processed over there. And on December 23rd, we left Fort Lawton on a troop train on the Great Northern, went up, took the northern route, and we went all the way. And by the way, we spent Christmas up near a place called Minot, North Dakota. And we spent Christmas there on the troop train. The only thing I remember is they shoved 6 crates of oranges on the plane. We were eating oranges for quite a while. It's a dead of winter, you know, snow all over, and we're eating oranges. So anyway, we reached Camp Atterbury, Indiana, which which was the discharge center that I was going to be discharged from. Many of us brought trophies with us because while we were in Korea, General Hodges said, based on the number of battle stars you had, for one battle star you got a Japanese rifle because they raided the warehouse, you know. For 2 battle stars you got field glasses. For 3 or more battle stars you got a Japanese and then officer's pistol. I wound up with a Japanese officer's pistol with 4 stars. So I brought that home. Brand new and cosmoline, by the way. David's got it now. So anyway, we robbed at Camp Atterbury in Indiana. And I was surprised. All these fellas brought their Japanese rifles all the way to Camp Atterbury. They left it there and they went home without it. I couldn't understand why they did that, because why would they bring it all the way and not take it? But they didn't. It was just too much to carry, I guess. I got my discharge papers finally on December 29th. December 29th, we got out to the New York Central Railroad train, and that took us to the terminal in Cleveland. There, of course, it was 9:30 in the evening. My mother and father, my sister and my brother were there to meet me, you know, to pick me up and all that. So I got off the train, met them, and my mother took one look at me after all the hugging and all that went on. She says, Harold, he says, what's that green on your face? I was green here, green here. I said, Mom, I said, well, we're in the Pacific. We had to use mosquito nets. Malaria was prevalent. And we had to take a drug called Atterbury. This Atterbury gave that greenish color on our cheeks. I said, in about 2 months' time, I'll get rid of that, I said. But what they did is they gave you that, not to cure malaria, but to keep you going until you came back, you know. But you could still break out the malaria. The reason I bring that up is because on the ship coming back, they told us to stop taking that pill. Why? Because they wanted to know whether you would break out of malaria or not. A few of them did. I was fortunate I didn't. So anyway, that's what I explained to her. We're trying to. Then she took another look at me. She said, Harold, he said, could you please shave off your mustache? I said, yeah, Mom, I'll shave it off. So I did the next day. I shaved it off. But anyway, I was glad to get back, you know, and glad to get the job done that was sent there to do. I was happy to do it. And the one thing I'd like to say at the end is the fact that while we were on Tagaitai Ridge, we were getting ready to make the invasion of Japan. And as far as you could see, we had nothing but equipment all ready to be loaded on ships to go, you know. We were told, our group, that we were going to go to the China coast. Others were going to go to make the direct hit on Japan. It was well known at the time that the Japanese soldiers were quite different from the Germans. And the fact that the Japanese soldier fought to the very end to protect their emperor. They didn't know when to quit. They would fight to the end, to the last man. They told us, had we had taken that invasion and not dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that easily both sides could have lost well over 1 million men. But it's a good thing that Hirohito finally woke up, the military finally woke up, that after the bombing of Nagasaki, they said, we had enough, let's call it quits. And I'm glad they did. Thank you very much.
Anybody like to ask a question? I'll give you the mic. You can ask a question. Oh, yeah.
Before answering the question, I want to thank David and, of course, my granddaughter. Catherine. They did an awful lot of work in preparing for this presentation.
Hey, Dad, I'll give you one question. How many Japanese messages do you think you intercepted over your time in the war?
Well, I would say that just from Sateko 4, the strongest Japanese naval station that we copied, for which we got a citation, I copied that station personally about 400 messages. I know we must have copied well over 2,000. But because we copied that, they could send them over decoding. They could decode it because the code was broken. As far as other stations, the Army stations, the Marine stations and all that, easily 2,000 to 3,000 messages.
Ronnie goes first.
Question. Did they change the codes at all, the Japanese, as they went along, or they kept it pretty much the same?
The code.
Yeah. Did they change the codes over time, or did the codes stay the same code all the time?
No, they didn't change the code, the same code all the way through the Pacific. What they would do, of course, using cryptography, they would change that, you know, because everything was coded, and if you used your cryptographic devices, you know, you could change it, you know, where the letter A could be the letter C, the letter D could be the letter F. And that way, decoded, they could understand what was being said. But 99% of everything that was transmitted was all coded. And it's the same code, the Katakana code. Always a combination of a consonant and a vowel. Got it? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, if we had you intercept or send code right now, how fast could you do it? If right now you had to intercept or send code, how fast could you do it right now?
Oh. Yeah, people have asked me about what I could do. Frankly, if I spent about a week and a half, I could go back to high-speed code. I think I could copy 20, possibly 25 if I had the bug, you know. But I'd say 20 words a minute if I had about a week. We could have practice, I could do it. In fact, you could put anything in front of me you want, and I could just give you the dots and dashes on it. St. Gregory, I can tell you that easily with the International Morse Code. I remember the Morse code very well, never skipped one. But when it comes to the Japanese code, I just have a blank.
Could you do the code for St. Gregory right now?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Same.
Same.
Let me mark it down here. Saint, S-A-N-T. Did-a-dit, did-a, did-it, da-dit, da. Saint. Gregory. Da-da-dit, did-a-dit, dit, da-da-dit, da-da-da, did-a-dit, da-da-da-da.
Wow.
Madeline, do you think you can do that?
What did you think of General MacArthur?
What did you think of General MacArthur, Dad?
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that question. It's a very good question. I felt very highly of General MacArthur. He had a fellow who had a lot of pride, you know. Anything that was being transmitted to the States and all that used his name. He had two generals under him that I met when I was in New Guinea. One was General Kruger, the other one was General Eichenberger. One was head of the 6th Army, the other one the 8th Army. You hardly ever heard their names. It was always General MacArthur. Well, General MacArthur was a real soldier. On the island of New Guinea, we were on the western side of half of New Guinea, the eastern side with the Australian. What happened was that MacArthur said, after we captured Hollandia and New Guinea, he said, forget about the Japs on the right-hand side, on the Australian side. Let them sit there and starve. He said, no sense in going in there and try to get them, because we'd have casualties if we tried doing that. So we did just that. Now, we were surprised simply because when we were on the Dutch side like that, in the jungles we had powdered eggs. See, they never had fresh eggs, they had powdered eggs. And yeah, we got tired of powdered eggs. We didn't particularly like powder days. But anyway, we stacked them up there, and at night, some of these Japs would come in there and steal them. And we were glad they were stealing them because we didn't particularly care to use them, but they were starving. So he left a lot of the soldiers on an island that we captured all the way up and down. Let them starve, let them be there, just protect that they don't get anything coming in, no supplies coming in, let them sit there. Do you know that I read in the paper that there were Japanese on the Australian side that were getting 2 years after the war's over. They didn't know the war was over. They're on the island. You may have heard that, you know, and I was surprised to read that. But that's the method General MacArthur used, where rather than sacrifice lives, you let them starve, just keep going. But I thought he was a great general as far as I was concerned.
Okay, I think that's it, Dad. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Go ahead.
You're not getting in. All right. Thank you.
Alice.
Finally.
I have become you notice.
Yeah, yeah.
Things for cooking.
I wish they asked their other veterans not to take pictures.
Harold, that was awesome. That was awesome. I love it.
There are
You had a better mic system, but you were good.
When I mentioned the planes, I said, I know who's listening.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It was terrific. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Very good.
And Dad also, as you can tell, he's pretty organized. He's retained every letter he sent home from the war in chronological order. So we're going to have those transcribed also and given to the World War II Museum. So he's pretty excited about that. So we'll be there in late October.
A photo with the deacon. Thank you.
Washington. Yeah, President Washington.
Sure.
Yeah, that's where I came in.
I know where you came in from.
And the German prisoners were fishing up and stuff.
Yeah.
Fort Lawton. I was there a year and a half.
How long were you there?
November 54 to when I quit, 56, January.
Yeah, because I was there.
Okay, she was.
It's nothing now. It's just civilians. That's all it is. There was 2 WAC attachments and stevedores, which I was assigned to, and that was it.
You didn't eat your cake here. Eat your cake.
You better eat. Hey, listen. Hey, wait. I just had to share that with
That
you.
is good. I was surprised to hear that.
Fort Lawton.
I didn't know anybody knew Fort Lawton.
Oh, sure.
That's where it was. From Seattle with a boat, right to Fort Lawton.
That's right. They would billet them there, and then they'd ship them out to Fort Lewis to discharge them out.
Yeah.
That's how I even discharged out of Fort Lewis. I lived in Puyallup.